So here's what we're gonna do. There's 2 new games coming out, both in franchises I really like, so we're gonna stop this train for just a moment to go off onto the side and cover those games, but once we're done, we're gonna get right back on the Crash train and cap things off with Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy. Well, safe to say that didn't go the way I wanted. Nice mic quality, by the way, idiot. Yeah, so it was supposed to be my quick closer to Crash's PS1 ventures. Got put off by over half a year. To put it simply, I wanted to do FNAF and Manhunt for Halloween, and after the Cuphead DLC video, I saw we were getting close to October, so I figured I'd put Insane on the back burner for a bit. Unfortunately, life is as life does, and things don't work out the way you want them to, so FNAF came out smoothly, but Manhunt took me all the way until September, and before the year ending, I want to get out that Sonic video, but if I did the Sonic video, I needed to do Frontiers after it, and then Frontiers took more time than I thought it would, so I had to rush to get the April Fool's video out. So yeah, things got a bit busy. Anyway, on with the show. 2017, we get an earth-shattering reveal that the Bandicoot was back, and being the huge Crash fan I was, obviously I was hyped. Full remakes of the original trilogy, but Mr. Activision says, hey, who cares about that, here's Crash and Skylanders. Seeing as I hadn't played Skylanders since 2013, this got a neat from me, but that's it. But then the game finally came out, and it was a timed exclusive on PS4. God damn it. Yeah, I had to wait a while before I got to go insane, and I still have a vendetta against timed exclusivity to this day. I would get a small glimpse at heaven before entering it properly, however. So, one random Sunday in 2017, my dad wanted to go to some sports thingy, but it just so happened the random sports thingy had a PlayStation truck playing some games on these kiosks. One of the games just so happens to be the trilogy, and I managed to resist shoving the kid on it out of the way, and finally got my turn to play. If I remember correctly, the level I got to play was Hang 8 from Crash 2, and I was utterly stunned. I had such a fun time, I even got both gems just to play it for as long as possible, and then when we got home from that, I was hit by the cruel reality that I still can't play the game, so yeah, that was a fun little random occurrence I experienced. But after a while, we got the announcement Insane was going cross-platform, and man, that was a great day for me. I got it pretty much when it released, and nearly exclusively played it for a while there. I mean, how could I not? The originals are some of my favorite platformers, and Crash 1, so them being remade is a recipe for success. And yeah, pretty much, cause to get ahead of myself, game's pretty damn good. I just want to dive in, so let's start with the first thing you'll see in each game, the vastly improved cutscenes. The animation on these are really good, and it particularly benefits Crash 1. It's night and day between this and the original. It's really expressive, the voice actors give a great performance, and despite no lines being rewritten, some more personality is put in by having Tawna actually try to fight off the scientists. See, this feels like something to get you ready for the adventure. This feels like they forgot to explain what the plot was and whipped it up a week before release. The remade versions are a fair bit more cartoony than their original counterparts, which I feel in most areas improves them, but it also detracts whenever they're trying to be more intimidating, namely the cutscene in Crash 3. In the original, Uka Uka was shrouded in darkness, unmoving to put emphasis on his words, with Entropy looming in the background to give his reveal some nice weight. In Insane, Uka Uka flies all over in a brightly lit time twister, which looks really nice but doesn't hit as hard to me, and Entropy appears through a time portal, which I actually like, it just isn't as suspenseful as his original reveal. I feel like Sane Trilogy's cartoony flair is something that gives added life to this whole game, but also changes things in some areas and doesn't have as palpable of an atmosphere because of it, which is something I'll definitely talk more about later. Overall, though, I think the games look really great. I don't take back any of the praise I gave to the originals, as they still look amazing for PS1 games, but Sane Trilogy set itself as the standard for overhauling classic games for the modern day, and really gives these locations new life. Also, thought it good to note that the game runs at 60 FPS on PC, which looks and feels really nice, but I'm confused as to why it didn't get a frame rate boost on PS5 and Series X, especially since both consoles bumped up Crash 4 to 4K 60 FPS, and I'd bet good money that Crash 4 is a lot more graphically intensive. Either way though, there are a lot of standout upgrades that happened in some specific levels. One of the ones that first blew me away were the river levels from Crash 1 and 2 having some really nice looking water effects. The new lighting added when being near the toxic sludge in Crash 1 is great. The machinery levels feel a lot more visually interesting in this game. The ice levels in Crash 2 were some of my favorites, which I was happy about since that was also the case in the original. The B levels are good as well and were given this nice subtle sunset to them. The nighttime Arabian levels look amazing here, as do surprisingly enough the water levels too. Even something as simple looking as the bridge levels got overhauled real well and are some of my favorites in the game despite being just a giant white void. There are admittedly some sour spots though. First, with the easiest to quantify, the electricity in the sewer levels looks more like piss water, and I'm not exactly a big fan of how you can see past the buildings and into the skybox during the future levels. Like, you couldn't have added a couple extra buildings to block it out a bit. Yeah, it happened in the original too, but it was a PS1 game. Crash 1 is easily the most polarizing though, because the intimidation factor and atmosphere of the original game was a little lost in the transition. This mostly comes down to music, which I'll touch on later, but also a lot of areas got brightened up, which I guess you could argue is to make things easier to see, but my problem in Crash 1 wasn't visibility, it was literally everything else. I feel of the affected stages, Slippery Climb, the lab, the temple ruins, Pinstripe, and Embryo's boss arenas, and especially Generator Room got the worst of it. Generator Room is especially notable for changing these threatening screens of Cortex watching your every Cortex watching your every move to now be changed to him having a nasty case of the hiccups. I can't even begin to understand what they were going for on this one. On one hand, it helps to make the games in the package more visually cohesive, but I also kinda liked how Crash 1 stood out from the rest with its darker tone. Also on the graphical note, because I didn't know where else to slog it in, and it's a major nitpick, I don't think the water looks nearly as good in the sunset levels as in the original. It just doesn't match the lighting as nicely. There is, however, one notable area where the new graphics greatly improved the gameplay, though. Now I can kinda see in the dark during night fights. Again, the box gem isn't as painful. Thank God. I want to run through a few miscellaneous things now. Firstly, box toggles have been added to the HUD for every game. You can now play as Coco in each of the games. She's the same as Crash, but it's still neat, though I'm not sure why she can't do boss fights. A weird addition, Crash 1 now has a box hologram in front of the exit portal like in 2 and 3, but it doesn't make as much sense because you still grab the gem in the end stage tally like in the original, so yeah, it's just a bit redundant. Also, I'm not sure if it's just me, but it felt like Crash's movement speed was faster in 2 and 3 compared to 1. Assuming I'm not going insane, which is a possibility, I assume it has to do with the different approach to level design 1 has in comparison to the other two. While 1 has a lot more precision platforming and just generally smaller platforms more frequently, 2 and 3 have levels that are built larger and would accommodate the faster speed better. Time trial relics have also been added to Crash 1 and 2 and Jesus Christ. Okay, so you get the Crash Dash boots in Crash 2, but not in Crash 1, and with the precision platforming I just mentioned, it honestly makes sense. That being said, it also makes the relics in Crash 1 a painful experience, cause you gotta make sure every jump counts and that you don't miss a beat, otherwise good luck. What's funny is that since Crash 2 and 3 have more similar level design philosophies, I actually had a relatively stress-free time getting through Crash 2's relics, but man, those Crash 1 times. There are two final things I have on the topic of game-wide stuff, both being negative. Firstly, why would you not fix the backtracking? I feel like the problems with the camera involving backtracking is one of the most common complaints these games get, especially regarding Crash 2, because that one probably has it the worst. I'm not sure why they just couldn't move the camera further back a bit if the game noticed you were backing up on a linear path, because it would have vastly improved stages like the pits and Diggin, which is shocking considering it fixes a lot of other random problems the games have. Final issue, the hitboxes. Yeah, y'all saw this coming. I generally don't have too many hitbox issues with this game, but whenever it does crop up, it's pretty annoying. I don't have many hitbox issues in Crash 1 except the spider that totally got robbed of a hit, and the orbs in Cortex's fight because what the hell, but Crash 2 and 3 definitely have their moments. Nitro crates are consistently a bit wacky in both games, and Crash 3 mainly has a problem when these spiky boys show up. Crash 2 has the most problems for me with these electric robots, fireheads, and especially Engine's lasers. This was the most trouble I've ever had fighting him. It's not a huge problem for me, but it's definitely something that can ruin the fun and something I'm surprised wasn't entirely patched. With everything covered revolving around the entire trilogy, I want to jump into some specific games to look closer at the little nuances, starting with Crash 1. This was the one I was most excited to see get remade, yeah, even more than Crash 3. Considering I found Crash 1, in a word, painful, I wanted to see them fill in the cracks to make something worthy of standing next to its sequels, and I think they accomplished just that. They also changed some stuff presentation-wise, and no one brings this up, but the second island moves the opposite direction now. Doesn't mean anything other than constantly moving to the right makes my brain happy now, but what a weird thing to change. Presentation was also extremely enhanced on the bosses, making them feel on the same level as the ones from 2 and 3. I was kinda hoping they would have spruced up some of this game's bosses to make them more interesting, or at least give them a new phase or two, but no, instead they decided to give Papu Papu double the health bar for some godforsaken reason. Also, again, the hitboxes in Cortex's fight. These orbs are abominable, dude. Bonus stages now also count for the box gem in Crash 1, and with them there's now bonus platforms similar to 2 and 3 that get activated when you find all the character tokens associated with them. It's this weird mixing of the style from the original game and the style from its sequels, and while it is a little weird, I'm a fan of it for two reasons. Firstly, since they count for the gem, if you only had one shot at getting all the boxes like in the original, that would suck. And secondly, the platform appears near the box with the last token inside of it, so if I get to the platform a token short, I know that there's one I missed somewhere before this. They also added some nice quality of life things, like adding Wumpa Fruit to the invisible paths, notably in Road to Nowhere, thank God, and they added a gem platform to take you back off the route at the end of Native Fortress's red gem path, instead of having you make leaps of faith back down. Also, the physics got completely reworked to where now all the games control roughly the same. It feels different from all the originals, but for Crash 1 it massively improves things. The control rework makes all my deaths feel deserved and makes platforming challenges I despised in the original a lot more fun. The one part where the control falters is with the hog, which I already mentioned being stiff in the original, but it's somehow worse here. Like, there's a real struggle at play shifting from side to side. The largest change, though, and the most substantial, are the changes to box gems, and by that I mean, yes, you can die and grab the gem in Crash 1 now. This is incredible. Now I can do the impossible, enjoying going for 100% in Crash 1. I do like, however, that this challenge to break all the boxes without dying remains intact for the colored gems, which I mean, as someone who had a hell of a time getting through Lost City in the lab, I still get to suffer a bit. If you mess up at some point, instead you're greeted with a nearly perfect, but you died. Imagine seeing that on a funeral card. This not only fixes a major problem I had while keeping some of its spirit around, it also makes colored gems feel more substantial, as they aren't something I randomly pick up. It's like in the other games, I need to try a bit harder for them. Finally, while it isn't the largest change, it is one that means the most to me. The ability to save the game wherever you want. It's the bare minimum and something even the original should have had, but god, I'm so happy I can save like a normal video game. The vastly improved control, ability to die freely for 90% of the game, and option to save at any time makes everything so much more enjoyable. It lets me appreciate a lot more of Crash 1's level design and its strength and simplicity. The no bullshit straight up focus on platforming with satisfying design and unique layouts, with basically no focus on alternate gameplay styles, is a big reason why not only I have a bigger appreciation for this game, but why I consider it as the best remake of the three. In some ways, I might like the remade version more than Crash 2, which is insane to say. For the final thing to discuss on the Crash 1 side, there was a scrapped level restored to the game, that being Stormy Ascent. I remember back when the game was only on PS4, Stormy Ascent was a DLC you'd pay for, but then it just started coming with the game when it started getting ported, just as a nice middle finger to anyone who bought it early. The stage was originally cut for being too hard, and considering it's Crash 1, we're in for some shit. And sure enough, yeah, it's pretty difficult, but honestly, that makes it one of the most fun in the game for me because of how it combines a ton of platforming enemy layouts to make this one giant gauntlet. Going for the time trial relic makes me weep though. With Crash 1 out of the way, we now get to move on to Crash 2, and interestingly enough, this was the one I was least excited to see remade. Now, that makes it sound like I wasn't looking forward to it, which isn't the case at all. I was super happy for all the games. Just Crash 2 was kinda caught in the middle. I was really looking forward to Crash 1 since I wanted to see how it was improved, and similarly, I was looking forward to Crash 3 since it was my favorite and the one I had nostalgia for. Meanwhile, Crash 2 was stuck in the middle. I don't have any intense feelings for it. I just thought it was a really fun game. It also is the remake I probably have the least to say about. Firstly, though, there are some nice changes in the warp room, actually. The hologram messages are a lot more dynamically animated, which just makes them more entertaining to watch than the original, especially for Embryo. He's so wacky, it makes him funny when saying even the most mundane things. I will say, it's a bit jarring how they go from being animated nicely and having a lot of movement to going back to their default pose when the message ends, which is pretty nitpicky, but I noticed it more as the game went on. A nice quality of life change is letting you refight the bosses, since Crash 2 was the only one of the trilogy that didn't let you fight the bosses after the first time, which I always found strange. A lot of the notable changes for me are the small things. For instance, Cold Hard Crash had the camera move slightly up so you can better see that one annoying box in the bonus room, and the new loading screen tips make certain secrets easier to find for yourself if you're new. They were in Crash 1 as well to show you how colored gems work, that not being able to kill the pigs on the bridge was intentional, and that Stormy Ascent is a very funny level. But Crash 2's act to nudge you in the right direction, like the really needed "the giant bear opens a special passage" hinting unbearable. Also, I feel I must emphasize the nitro crates being weird just cause Hanging Out's bonus room was like a lightning rod for all of these problems. I had a nitro block my jump into me, had me fall along one and it didn't go off. I'm still wondering what kind of cosmic bullshit happened where everything just went wrong here. Anyway, back to things I like, the jetpack. While it still isn't preferred, the controls feel a lot better in the remake, a lot less stiff and more responsive here than in the original. In fact, all the vehicles here feel just as good, if not better than the original. The only sour spot is Polar now makes the worst sounds I have heard in my life when you jump. Unfortunately, though, this remake commits an unforgivable sin, and that's not allowing you to get the red gem and Snow Go early. You can still do the movements and stuff like in the original, but they moved it a little bit up that's evil. For some final stuff to wrap up Crash 2 really quickly, I swear these nitros are way closer together in Cold Hard Crash. The lighting in the Firefly levels can look pretty bad at times, and I really like the glow of the crystals. It makes them a lot more tantalizing to grab. Weirdly enough, Crash 2 didn't get a special stage for the remake like 1 and 3 did, and I'm not sure why, but either way, that means we just get to swiftly move on over to Crash 3. Crash 3 is the first one I popped on when I played the trilogy, and seeing as it's the game I have the most experience with, I heavily scrutinized it when playing, and overall, I think it stuck the landing, as did all the games here, although there's a bit more snags here than with the others. Firstly, time for some nitpicks. Since you save by pressing the trigger like in all the other games, that means the giant TV here that was originally for saving is pointless, and also means that since it's on the same button that you use for the crash dash, you can't use that in the warp room either, which just kind of annoys me. The animation at the start of Entropy's fight isn't as smooth, and I feel like I have to emphasize I can see into the skybox in the future levels, probably should have fixed that. Also, the same way the new graphics helped in Night Fight, it also massively improves Area 51 to where getting the relic actually wasn't painful. In fact, I actually got the Platinum Relic on my first go, which was crazy comparing it to the experience I had when I played the original for the video. Speaking of which, that problem I had getting stuck on random stuff in the original doesn't happen here, which made relic hunting a lot more fun across the board, and I've picked up a lot of Platinum Relics in the remake. It's only a matter of time until I go for all of them at this point. Honestly, I have a lot of problems in Crash 3 surrounding the vehicles. I have a few minor gripes with the bike, some problems with the plane, and a lot of agitation towards the jet ski, but surprisingly none with Pura, so let's start at the beginning. The bike's main issue involves the ramps here. The jump felt very smooth in the original, but here it's super janky. Like, the camera snaps when you're in midair and then snaps when you're back on the ground. Gonna be honest, in some areas it made me avoid ramps just cause it's so unsatisfying in comparison to the original, and it really started to annoy me. Meanwhile, the plane is pretty fine, all things considered. My problem has to do with the rings of power level, because going through the speed boost makes your control extremely stiff. In the original, your control did get a bit restricted to balance out your fast speed, but it's on another level here. I was always able to glide through all the rings, maintaining the fastest speed possible, but here, I'm just trying my best to go through all of them while keeping a sort of brisk pace. There is a definite struggle at play with the plane, which feels terrible here. Then there's the jet ski. Dear God, I got very comfortable with the jet ski on my revisit to Crash 3, so coming back to Insane was a lot of whiplash that I instantly experienced when I could barely turn into stationary objects. The reason for that is everything feels super slippery and imprecise, which is a far cry from how the controls were before this. Now, you get used to it, and when you're moving fast, it's pretty fun, but it is a giant downgrade from the original controls and makes levels that prioritize precision, namely Hot Coco, to be a major problem. Thankfully, though, there is something that can provide difficulty without being annoying about it, and that's the new, completely original level added to Crash 3's remake, Future Tense. I see the pun titles are fitting right in. This level is incredible, not only using a lot of platform patterns and level hazards that are both new and old to great effect, but also placing a large emphasis on your power-ups, which gives the stage a very unique feel. This is also a good time to mention nice quality of life features added to a few power-ups, namely the belly flop not taking as long to get back up, and the fruit bazooka having faster aiming and not hitting Wumpa Fruit, which I'm not sure why that was a thing in the first place. I kinda wish they changed the weird double jump timing, seeing as this is coming right after other Crash games like Twin Sanity, Titans, and Mind Over Mutant that all got rid of it, so it would have been appreciated. Either way, it is really nice to see your power-ups used in more complex ways. I'm surprised the base game never did anything like this in the final world, since it would have been the last stretch and you would have had everything at that point, but maybe it would have increased the difficulty a bit too much. Thankfully, since this is completely optional, they don't have to worry about that and can just go all in, which makes it really fun. If you're going for the gem, you have to split off from the main path to get some boxes on the side paths, and they use these new mirrors in very creative and fun ways. Separated from the power-ups, it also gives some straight-up fun and intense platforming. It makes things very satisfying when you finally clear house for the gem and utter hell when going for the relic. Hey, still got the platinum though. Honestly, it's become one of my favorite Crash levels for how well it just mixes everything together. The final thing I want to talk about, and a pretty divisive one too, surprisingly, that's the soundtracks of all the games. I know I could have talked about this when I was talking about the trilogy-wide stuff, but it's my video, damn it, and I like doing the soundtracks at the end. Fight me about it. Now, there isn't really anything to talk about in Crash 3, since I think all the songs pretty much emulate the same feel of the originals, just better. Shout out to the boss themes against Dingodile and Cortex especially. Crash 2 is mostly solid, however there are some themes I have some qualms with. I remember hearing a lot of debate on the river theme, since some people thought the very exuberant guitars were a bit much, but personally I think the rock fits well with the super radical and bodacious kickflips on water. The bear themes also caught some flack for having a very different feel from the original, and yeah, that's how I describe it best. It's different. Although, personally, yeah, I do prefer the original version because it feels more in line with the rest of the ice themes. Other than that, though, I think Crash 2 was pretty solid too. The themes for the chasing ice levels are especially the highlights. Then there's Crash 1, oh boy. So the music here was brought more in line with the cartoony feel the remake tries to have with all the games, which I feel is inevitably gonna make the music clash because of the atmospheric feel of the original. Now some tracks I think get the original feel down well, mainly the Jungle, River, Bridge, and Naga Fortress themes. Those were pretty solid and in line with what I'd expect. It's mainly when we get to the more foreboding and heavy tracks where things start to stray away from the originals, mainly the temple and machine levels, and especially Generator Room and Slippery Climb. In the original, those tracks were so powerful, heavy percussion used always made things feel a bit more tense, but in the remake, especially in the case of the temples and Slippery Climb, they have these lighter accents that try and emulate the originals without straying too far from the cartoony core that the remakes have. It's kind of the same case with the bear levels in Crash 2, they're different, and I wouldn't even say they're bad, I just prefer the unique feel the original game had, although to be honest, this is mainly about Slippery Climb, man. I love that track, it felt super sinister and intense, and I really wish I would be able to hear the original but with new instruments, and now I'm sad. Overall though, the remake soundtrack is really good. I pretty much always prefer the remake versions for 2 and 3, and the first game's songs are super good too. I just think the originals had a unique style I appreciated. With that, we close out Crash and Sane Trilogy, probably one of the best collection deals in recent memory. I can't really think of a lot of games that come close to it. 3 fully remade games for only $40, what a steal. Take notes. It was fun to come back to Crash after stopping for a bit there, but honestly kinda glad I did 3 videos on the same series in a row, even if they were relatively short, I still got kinda burnt out. I'm not sure when I'll be coming back to the Bandicoot, half because I have other stuff I want to do right now, and half because when I get back I'm gonna have to do Wrath of Cortex, and haha, no. But I'll try and slog again when I can. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video, take care, and I will see you all later.